Hello everyone, welcome to this new video. Today is going to be an exciting topic because I have Jimmy on the show from WorldCraft Logistics. Jimmy is based in the US. He's having a logistic business between Asia and the US, and I'm very happy to have you today, Jimmy. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me here at the show, your YouTube channel. I hope to bring value to this interview and hopefully help other company out there optimize their logistic, save them money, and try to maneuver through this global economy with all these taxes, right?
Yeah, Jimmy, let's get into it. Can you briefly introduce us about yourself and then your business?
I'm the CEO of my company. I've been doing logistics for 18 years. Office in Vietnam. We office in China, the US, and we have also office in Canada. I would say one of our strongest route is between Asia and North America, right? However, we also do global business, as in like if you have shipment from India, in and out of India or Australia or the UK, as a global company, we handle shipment globally, but in terms of our own office, Vietnam, China, US, and Canada. Here in the US, we have our own truck fleet, which is the last mile delivery. For me, the reason why I invest into the truck fleet is because the last mile delivery is always important. It's either that you are late or you are on time, right? So that's why trucking is important for the last mile. And then if the customer needs support or needs storage, we do have a warehouse across the US. We have warehouse in California, Texas, and Jersey. So cover west, east, and the middle of the United States for distribution.
Okay, very great. Jimmy, I'm excited to learn more about that. Maybe we can start by a bit of overview and the recent announcements of Trump regarding the tariff. What are your observations regarding all the supply chain and all the distribution? Do you think it's going to create chaos into all the shipping lines? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, the Trump tariff 10%, I would be honest with you, the 10% that Trump is creating is against China, right? So in terms of my client that shipped from China to the US, the 10% doesn't affect them, right? Because they've been paying 25, 50% for the last 5-6 years, right? So another 10%, customers still gonna buy. However, is there gonna be a slowdown? So we're just gonna imagine there's 10 companies right now that is shipping to America, right? And if this 10% is gonna hurt somebody, maybe it's gonna hurt 10%. So it's gonna hurt 1 out of 9 customer. Is there going to be a slowdown? Of course, 100%, right? There is going to be a slowdown. I do see a shift in terms of like company or trying to shift their cargo to India or to Vietnam. However, a lot of this country infrastructure is not all there yet. I guess it's like this. If the price of food increase by 10% at your favorite restaurant, will you go to a cheaper restaurant to eat to save 10%? Most people, the answer is no. So for that reason, this 10% is not gonna do much to the relationship between China and the US.
You actually touched this point about diversification, and right now many companies are still, for the long run, trying to diversify their supply chain. So they'll be looking at India, for instance, or Vietnam, which are neighboring countries, which can often import the raw material from China, but at least they're going to diversify the risk. But there is, as you emphasize on the infrastructure and then the logistic supply chain, what are the main differences that you observe between the Indian infrastructure or Vietnam compared to China?
Once a year, I travel Asia for a month. I go to Vietnam, I stay there for like 1 week, and then I go from north to South China and I visit all my customer. I visit all their factories, and I also observe and also report back to the buyer overseas. So I create a relationship between the shipper and the buyer, right? And I also send information to the buyer, hey, the factory is doing this, the factory is doing that, because a lot of the buyer, they don't have time to visit their factory. So since I'm there in China already, I usually visit the factory and I send a report back for them too. It's free, it's a free service, right? So the infrastructure between China and Vietnam, let's compare that, right? So when Chinese government decide to make lithium battery, okay, they would zone a Pacific area like, 200 acres to specifically make batteries. and they would run piping like gas, all the chemical piping to those area, and factory would just move there, and all the infrastructure is there for the factory. Like for example, in China, there's a battery factory. You're looking at like huge factories, and then next to it, there's the dormitory. So the worker will go to work at the factories, and then later on they go home, they sleep. The next day they go back to work again, right? So it's very convenient. We are talking about efficiency, right? Let's compare that to Vietnam, because a lot of the viewer is going to be Vietnamese or foreigner that might be Vietnamese, right? Comparing Vietnam to China, because that's what a lot of people go into. They go in between China and Vietnam. So let's talk about Vietnam. So Vietnam, well, you don't have as much support from the government. The government is not going to run a gas pipe to all the factory in that area, or a special chemical to support the infrastructure there for that zone, right? The factory would have to use a delivery truck tank of chemicals to their factory. So what deliver method is faster? Of course, a gas line is going to be way faster than a truck driving back and forth. That's one infrastructure, right? So now their logistics of delivery is faster, better, and more efficient. When the worker in Vietnam, when they finish with their work, they go on their motorbike and they go home. And a lot of times they hit traffic, right? Maybe 45 minutes or 2 hours of traffic, depend, right? So the worker go home, they're stressed going to work, they're stressed going home. In terms of China, they provide a place for the worker to sleep, work, eat. In Vietnam, it's kind of like now the worker might work 8 hours just like China. Let's say they both work 8 hours, but the worker in Vietnam have to travel a longer distance to complete that task. Versus the worker in China is like, okay, we're getting out of work. Let's go to the dormitory. Let's eat. Let's go to sleep. The next day you wake up and you go to work. I would say there's no outside noise, right? When there's no outside noise, the worker also become more efficient. We also face the same problem like this in India, right? The reason why I compare Vietnam first, because we both know about Vietnam, but India is also the same infrastructure like Vietnam. So because of that reason, I would say it's extremely hard for company to get away from China to save 10%. Another example, so I have a customer who is the number one car brakes in America. We move cargo for him, right? And one of my concerns was like, hey, China's gonna increase 10% on the car parts. How do you feel about it? He just laughed and he say, where else are you gonna go?
Jimmy, I think those examples illustrate very much also what is the mindset at the moment in those business owners and then big retail or brands that are not only considering the tariff, but other parameters that are just depending on each country, and then the capabilities of the workers, and then what is actually the ability or in terms of machinery, the skill, right, of those labor force. So this is just one of the parameters among others. You talk a bit about the government implication into having an export policy that is very much focusing on that in China. It's becoming a little bit in Vietnam, but we are not yet at this level. What is it in terms of dealing with customs? You have both experience dealing in India, in Vietnam versus in China. Can you compare about that, about paperwork that you have to do on behalf of clients or sometimes facilitate to export goods overseas?
I mean, as long as you have all your documents, when we ship product from America to Vietnam, we never get exam. I would say maybe out of 1,000 container, one container get exam, which means the US custom want to look at it, right? But for shipment coming to the US or the shipment that come into Vietnam, that's when it get complicated. The custom on both sides, they want to exam to make sure that the shipment is not hurting the people or, misdeclare of tax, right? So let's get back to it. In terms of exporting from Vietnam to the US, we have no problem, right? However, in terms of clearing custom here in the US, for example, if you're going to be bringing food from Vietnam in for the first time as first-time importer, there's a high chance that you will get searched. It's not random. You will get searched, right? You probably get searched for like three times, and then after that, they understand your company, and after that, the search is less, it's more consistent, it's become random. But in terms of clearing custom in the US, custom in the US is very easy. It's all electronics. So as long as we do everything by electronics and all the paperwork is submitted, they release the cargo. You live in Vietnam. When we import stuff into Vietnam, things get a little bit complicated.
You discussed and then you touched a bit this point earlier about quality and how do you make sure that when the goods are leaving Vietnam or China, you do a type of inspection, etc. Do you have any processes in-house? Do you have a team going there to inspect the goods on behalf of clients as well to ensure a type of third-party final inspection? This is something that also WorldCraft Logistics is providing.
There's two ways that you buy product in a foreign country, either in Vietnam or in China, right? Or even in America, right? Anytime that you buy product from China or Vietnam, people either go to the direct factories, that's number one, or they go through a sourcing agent, right? You go to the direct factories, always hire an inspection company. We provide that service. Our inspection company provide like a 40, 50 page report, and the turnaround time is 24 to 48 hours. And then also, if you're working with a sourcing agent, that sourcing agent is technically your employee, right? So it's that sourcing agent best interest that you get the best product. So that sourcing agent usually will go to the factory and inspect for you for free. Or that sourcing agent is going to charge you a percentage, but that inspection agent is technically part of your team. For me, I see sourcing agent go out and they inspect the cargo. But in terms of working with Vietnam and China, please always send out an inspection team to inspect the cargo, because once the cargo get to the US and the product is already a flaw, shipping it back might just cost too much headache and too much money, and you already lost 90 days, 120 days, right, on a product that you invest to launch a product. So after losing 4 or 6 months, is it still profitable for you to do this project again? So inspection team in Vietnam, inspection team in China. That's my recommendation. And yes, we provide that service.
So inspection team is one thing. So making sure that before the goods leave, they are fitting with the client standard expectation and that everything just about the packaging, right? And then what are the other scenarios that can be put in place? Let's say I'm new entrant and this is the first time I export. Should I rely on the 3PL company who also provide warehousing? And then you also explained that the final mile delivery is also something interesting to explore. Can you explain that, this concept of 3PL and how your company, among others, can facilitate this process?
So like, for example, let's just say we work with a client that might live in Germany or a client that might live in Canada, and they purchase product from China, for example. So we have a client in Canada and he want to purchase product from China. So before the product gets shipped out, we also ask him a question, or her, hey, do you want to send an inspection team to inspect your product, right? So if they say yes, we will hire an inspection team to inspect their product in China. So boom, in China, they are protected. And then once the shipment get here to the US, let's just say if they are an Amazon seller and they sell on Amazon, obviously it's not going to their warehouse because they live in Canada or Germany, so they can't inspect this product. So we as a 3PL, because we provide the service, we are a warehouse as well, 3PL warehouse. So once the cargo get to our warehouse, we provide a free inspection. So a little better. In America, we don't charge. So the product coming to our warehouse, we would open the box, and then we will look inside the box and we take some photos. For example, if you were to sell your product on Amazon and you use a plastic bag that a kid could suffocate, and if they play with it, right, we need suffocation warning. So we know what is needed. So we open up the product. If there's a plastic bag, we take a picture of it and we tell the customer, hey, your bag is missing a suffocation warning, is needed or not, right? And then if it's missing, then the customer can make a decision if they want us to label it or not, right? So we, as a 3PL, we will be the last person that see and touch your product. That's why we provide this free service with photos. I mean, this is how I operate, right? Because at the end of the day, I have to protect my customer, right? That's how we work as a 3PL. And then last mile delivery, of course, when they want to deliver to Amazon or they want to deliver to their warehouse, we also provide trucking service.
Do you also plug dropshipping services from that? Meaning that you will be sending, if someone is selling through Amazon or dropshipping, you'll be also sending directly to the end client? Is this something you're also providing?
Yes. So we also provide not just B2B. B2B mean pallets or containers. We also provide B2C, which is business to customer, right? So a lot of people use Shopify. Let's give that example. A lot of people use Shopify, TikTok. We have WMS software that we will API. We connect with Shopify or we connect with TikTok Shop or the different platform that you have. And then whenever someone places an order on Shopify, for example, at 10 p.m., our software will pull the data from Shopify and then print out the labels. And then the next day, our staff come and pick, and then the inventory will get reduced from our warehouse. So the customer doesn't do anything. It's very automated. So this allows the customer to, like a lot of the customer, they work with different warehouse. They might like, oh, hey, here's the label. I sent out 4 or 5 order today. Can you ship it out for me? So we want to eliminate that. And then we want to inject as much automation as possible. So we do drop shipping.
And then now I would like to discuss a bit the international team. So you have team in Asia, team in the US. I guess sometimes it's difficult just us to find the right time zone, right, to discuss it, to make this interview. How do you deal with that? Do you have someone on the Asian part of the globe who is somehow the head of the office? How do you manage all those different time zones? And then when problems arise, how do you solve them accordingly?
The team in Asia and the team in America, we are on the opposite time zone, right? So usually the team in Asia, they're very efficient. I really don't manage the staff over there. I mainly talk to my head person, right? You check up on your head person, you see how he's doing or how she's doing. But over there, they manage without me. In China, they manage without me. Any problem in China and Vietnam, within Vietnam and China, they will 99% of the time they take care of it themselves, right? Within company, there's also conflict, right? Like if there's a problem between China and the US, right? Then I will have to jump in and say, okay, this is how we're going to solve it because it relates two countries, right? Or if there's a problem between China and Vietnam because that's how the cargo flow, then I jump in and I help them as well, right? Whenever two have a problem, then I jump in. But when there's one internally, then they solve it themselves.
Jimmy, we discussed before, prior doing this interview, about your plan of expansion. And then you share with me the idea of probably one day, I think it's in the next 3 years roadmap for you to have an office and then to expand to the Europe market. What are your plans into growing that business globally and being into 3 different continents?
I realized that a logistic company should be more than a logistic company. If a person wants to grow, he does not live in a box, right? Like for example, if a Vietnamese person want to grow, they do not stay in Vietnam. They travel to another country and they grow, right? Just like you, right? You grow in your country, but now you come to Vietnam, you grow in Vietnam. You are technically 2 persons in one body at this point, right? So in order for a logistic company to grow, a logistic company cannot just transport cargo. A logistic company is a network company. So right now in Canada, we are probably gonna grow extremely fast in Canada. We might grow like 400% in Canada this year. So we have a client that ship cargo between China and the US. They do about 30 container a month of cabinets, okay? So that client decide to go to Canada to visit Canada. So I tell that client, hey, if you're gonna go to Canada and visit Canada, I might have a buyer for you. I'm gonna introduce, you gotta go talk. So after they talk, they close $1 million deal. After they talk, right? Close $1 million deal. But the $1 million deal is actually pretty small. It's small compared to the project. The $1 million deal is only about 200 homes, right? So after they connect, right, now I get to do their shipping because I connect them, right? So my job now is not only to do shipping, my job now is how to help my client find business, right? If you're able to help your client find business, what would be the reason why your client won't grow? And what would be the reason why your client won't support you in the shipping? There should be no reason, right? I mean, you just closed $1 million deal. Give me the shipping, right? So I just came back from Canada today, and right now we are doing container for roughly about 4 Marriott construction in Canada in the next 6 months. We are doing the cabinet, the flooring, the windows, the rebar. And on top of that, we have another project over there in Canada for the next 15 to 20 years to build about 40,000 home over there. How does a company grow? I think as a leader, not just a logistic company, right? Any company, right? If a client come to you to ask you for a service, in return, find a way to make money for that client. It's a for every relationship. So same thing, how do I expand in Europe? So one of my clients in Europe right now, so we pretty much are gonna partner with that client that's currently in Europe and say, hey, I see that you are currently in Europe. You have a warehouse in Europe. Can I share this warehouse space with you? I know that I ship products to you to Europe and then you pay us. But if you have empty space inside your warehouse, can we rent this warehouse from you? Can we do logistics inside your warehouse? Can I give you money? I'm not here to take the client money all the time, but I'm finding a way to give the money back to the client. So now the money is going two directions. And because of that, the client probably going to use my money to grow his business bigger, right? And then now I have a footprint in Europe. So now you see my strategy for going globally is to grow with your client.
So it was crystal clear advice. Jimmy, you are growing with your clients. You already have a certain relationship. So you guys can shake hands and then expand together in different parts of the world. It was a pleasure to have you today, Jimmy. I will leave below in the description more details about your services. So if anyone want to reach you out, either for exporting from China or from Vietnam, they can directly reach you accordingly.
Well, thank you very much for having me here today. I really appreciate it. I hope this brings value to the watcher. And if anyone have any question, you're welcome to contact me. My information will be below. Thank you very much.
Thank you a lot, Jimmy.
Been down and I'ma get it right. Then I'll sight like